I love the outside our window.
Yeah, no, for sure. Well, Christine, why don't you start with our introductions, actually?
Okay, well, I'm Christine, and I'm normally in Santa Monica, but right now, which reflects what's outside my window, I'm visiting friends in Amagansett, near New York, on in the sort of Hamptons area. And yeah, and oh God, I'm a community builder, and I've been I've been in branding and branding strategy and messaging for my career in different iterations. And now about 2 years ago, I founded Stone Soup Ripple, which is all about creating community in the way that will create ripples
Mhm.
for people's lives, projects, collaborations. And they're sort of like, I just launched my fall series, my fall screening salon series, which is online. And it's sort of like a dinner party, but instead of the food being the main course, screened content is the main course. And before and after,
Mhm.
we are together. I sort of facilitate a gathering that brings us together, and I have a featured guest or two that's associated with the film or whatever we're seeing,
Mhm.
and they are part of the conversation after before they introduce it,
Mhm.
and then afterwards we talk about it. And the theme for this one is taking a stand, but not through acts of aggression, but through acts of service, compassion, love, and whatever else might be. But anyway, it's a great program, and you all are invited, and they're free to attend. I was sort of proving concept,
Yeah.
which I have done, and but I'm still offering these to the public. And
It's a
Shanghai
super
in progress.
cool program, actually. I mean, this is actually how Christine and I met, and it's really cool because we watch documentaries, which I don't watch enough of, and then you suddenly have like 25 other people to watch it with, and she also introduces the producers and directors and actors, or the cast as the documentaries as part of the program too. So it's a really cool way to get to know the people behind the scenes also. All right, we got Bob who just joined. Mary, why don't you go next?
Okay, I'm Mary Marks. I live south of Boston in a tiny little town called Holbrook in Massachusetts.
Mhm.
What's outside my window right now is rain, which I'm gonna mean some of you are rather jealous of, I'm sure. We
Yeah.
finally got the heat wave to die down a bit, so we're more temperate, but then we get rain. It's okay. Um, as I said in my intro, my daytime job is software testing, and
Mhm.
I have to send you a thanks, Shane, because I did a tiny little mind map of my demo I had to do an hour ago,
Oh,
and I managed
yay.
to get through it in 14 and a half minutes. I was
Yes.
allotted 15. So
Oof.
score for me, and I'm really happy at the
Awesome.
moment. So so that's what's going on in my life.
Well, that's like a weekly win.
Yes. And
Starting on Monday. You don't have to wait
yes,
until
and that
Friday
little
for
skip
that.
in your heart when you go, I did it and it's done and it's over.
Exactly. Well, it's never over, actually. It's almost kind of like, oh, now I got to go do the demo.
Yeah. But the map, the little, it was tiny, not much into it, but it was enough to give me direction so that I could get done, which was what I needed.
It's sufficient of purpose. That's all that matters, really.
Yep.
Yeah. Noah, it seems like your camera is on. I'm gonna pick on you next. Oh, sound. Okay. All good, all good. Let's go with, let's
Oh
see.
wait, he wrote something.
Oh, you wrote
He
something.
wrote it in the
Oh, got
chat.
it. There we go. Oh, hello, all. Noah in San Francisco Bay Area. Me too. Awesome. Just outside, two Siberian Huskies sitting on the balcony watching squirrels in the trees. Yep. My view is actually of cloudy San Francisco. Just wanted to know I'm currently nonverbal. Got COVID. Oh man, I'm sorry, man. Yeah, that does suck. Well, no, chat it
Wow.
is. I'm gonna keep the
We
chat
heal on
open.
that one
So
soon.
yeah, we're gonna keep the chat open so that I'm able to, kind of vocalize for you. Thank you so much, Noah. Awesome. All right. So everybody else who joined, we're just doing a quick round of intros and your name, where you're from, and what's outside your window. Olivia.
I'm so sorry. Okay. So I just pulled up, of course. I love that KSM is outside my window. So I just literally pulled up to work. I hadn't exactly finished the eye makeup yet. So that's what you see me doing as we do intros. I am Olivia Buba. I am Shing's wife. And I'm so excited. Watching him build this out in the last few months has been honestly magical. I feel like the jitters for him this morning. I even texted him before getting on here, just saying, I'm logging in. And also, you should be so proud of yourself. This has been such an incredible journey from ideation to figuring out which platform. The amount of research this man put into this is insane. Anyways, I'm not much of a mind mapper, but I'm trying to be, because I do realize what a valuable tool it is. So, or maybe I'll just have a husband for the rest of my life that uses mind maps. Either way, I could use some organization. I'm incredibly messy with my thoughts. So yeah, I'm excited to be here, you guys.
Yeah, why learn mind mapping yourself if you have a partner who's able to do that for you?
I'm gonna delegate that one.
Yeah, there you go. All right, Bruno, you're next.
Hey, how's it going? I joined a little later. Is it just the introduction?
Yeah, just intros, your name, where you're from, what's outside your window right now, which I kind of see
okay.
peeking out.
Yeah, so I'm Bruno. I'm originally I'm from Brazil, but I've been living in the Bay Area for the past 8 years. So I'm in Redwood City right now.
Nice.
Outside my window is Redwood City, I guess.
No squirrels and Iberian huskies?
No, nothing like that. You
Yeah.
might be able to see it if I do this. You can kind of see Redwood
Oh,
City.
it's cloudy out over today.
Yeah, it is. You can kind of see like 101 back there.
What a view.
Yeah. But yeah, excited to be here. And nice meeting everyone.
Yeah, good stuff. Thanks a lot, Bruno.
Yeah.
Bob or Sajiv, if your guys' mic is on.
I can go ahead.
All right, Sajiv.
Hi,
Awesome.
I'm Sajid. So I'm basically from India, but I'm currently living in Berlin for the past 7 years.
Wow.
Berlin, Germany.
Yeah.
So I'm working in ad tech. Basically, I just help companies put ads into the video. I work with all the big companies, the broadcaster companies, Discovery, Disney, whatever it is. Whenever you see ads, I help those companies put ads.
Yeah.
Outside of my windows, like it's boring old apartment, I can show you.
Oh, please do.
Very
Slightly
boring
blurry.
apartment. It's blurry?
Oh, it's because you've got the background on, similar to how
Okay.
the Zoom background that Mary has as well.
Okay,
There you
now
go. Yes, now we can see it. Yep, that's Berlin.
it's very boring. Yeah.
Well, actually, one of my my roommate Brian is heading to Berlin. He works in ad tech, so I'll put you guys in touch if you're
Yeah,
in
sure.
town like next week.
Yeah, sure. That would be
There
great.
you go. All right, Bob.
Okay, we here?
Yes, we are
Okay.
here. We are live.
Perfect. I'm kind of bleary-eyed. I'm actually in Seattle right now, but I'm
Oh,
from Florida. So I got in about 12. Yes. My son lives out here and we're going on a camping trip. So I
yes.
apologize for being a little bit late this morning. So I don't really want to show you what's out my window. I mean, I kind of can. It's kind of a dirty window here at the hotel, but I'm grateful for this Mind Map Nation that you put together. I've been following this on YouTube. I've been mind mapping for years
Yes.
in presentations and writing and things like this. So I'm really excited to watch all the collaboration, how all of this comes together. So excited to be here. And I think this is an incredible platform that you're building.
Thank you so much, Bob. I really appreciate that. And, and that's actually a perfect segue into, like the purpose of this community, which really is mind mapping there's so many permutations. I've started mind mapping about 15 years ago, back when I was in college, being trained as a student consultant, and then used it as a management consultant, and then through tech and both my professional and personal life, right? It's literally taken over my life from an organization standpoint. And what I realized that in my first year of being on YouTube, through all the feedback, is that there's so many different ways of using it. And Bob, and I think, you know, in your intro, you mentioned how you use it for like speech writing and different organizations, and use like probably a software that I'm not familiar with that probably spits out like a really full structure, right? So I wanted to create a community in which that everybody can actually share their different ways of mind mapping, so that it actually inspires us with different use cases. But not only that, I feel like, you know, this is where I feel like creativity and innovation is actually really outside of us. It comes through dialogue, right? If I only stick within my domain, it's actually quite boring. And I just, you know, regurgitate the same ideas over and over again. It's often through interactions with other people, other minds, other mindsets, other techniques. That's where all that creativity really comes from. So for me, those are epiphanies, right? And during a conversation, sometimes, you know, if you ever have these like moments or even shower thoughts where everything just connects, that's basically where that's the feeling that I want to have on this platform. And I think the other one is, you know, mind mapping to me is just a means to an end, or just a stepping stone towards, for example, intentional living, right? Every day in our lives, we're constantly assaulted by a lot of different chaotic factors, a lot of information. And this is not going to stop unless if we decide to, like, you know, go camping, live in the woods for a while, like Walden style. However, in modernity, we're just being assaulted by all this stimulus. So for me, mind mapping is a way to actually, whenever I feel lost or, you know, disorientated with everything going on, I stop and I map and I reorientate where I am on the map, where I'm heading, who I'm going with. Do I need to change directions, right? So all these things are able to be mapped out, and it gives me a much better handle on life. So in a lot of ways, that is the reason for this community, for us to share the different techniques that helps us in not just mind mapping, but organizing chaos in general, but also coming up with better ideas of living. So one of the, as I just, you know, mentioned, is that, you know, like for me, dialogue is super important rather than monologues. I would love to hear from each of you, you know, what you expect out of this community, and, you know, what are you currently living, or what are you currently working on in your life, and how do you think this community can help? So hopefully all of you are familiar with the raise hand button in reactions. I think it's this. If you go into reactions and you raise hand like this, it's very easy for me to tell, right? So if you're able to share just, you know, really quickly, what are you working on and how do you think this community can help? I would love to hear that. Because ultimately, I'm here and this community is here to help you get there. All right. Anyone want to start? Okay, Olivia.
Oh my gosh, it's a lot to juggle between raising the hand and unmuting myself.
A lot of buttons.
So it's actually perfect timing because I did just walk into the office. I wanted to mention the fact that I definitely feel like it's especially timely for me to be joining Mind Map Nation and hopefully learning from everybody inside of it in order to make this transition from marketing specialist to brand strategist, because I really feel like it's time for me to put on a bit of a different hat and mindset when it comes to my approach to what I do here at work. And so I feel like there really couldn't be a better timing with that. For me, as you know, accountability is a huge part of that. So I'm really excited. I'm most excited about Shing's Power Hours, as well as office hours, maybe to kind of try to wrap my head around the concept and get better at it. But I'm very excited about the accountability challenges that we might run together. I think that being able to even do possibly in the future 2-week sprints together could be, I don't know if anyone else needs accountability, but I'd love to see a lot of support systems within that because I need some hand holding personally. So
we're definitely going to have 2-week sprints, that's for sure. So I'll get into challenges in a bit, but I'm going to do a masterclass on 2-week sprints. And after that, we're going to do challenges based around that too.
Awesome.
Great. All right. Anyone else? And that can be something immediate or long-term as well that you're looking for. Okay, Mary.
Yeah, I had actually posted it as a response to your post.
That's right.
in the channel, but I've been working for a year now to kind of clear the clutter in personal space, in my head, in some of the project chaos that I'm in work. And so I was learning, I'm more interested in figuring out ways to see how it all interconnects so that I can declutter a thing that touches all of them if I can. But even as Olivia just said, just learning the process and trying to make sense of it all, because the clutter's there for a reason. I just got to find out what that reason is.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. Anyone else? All right. Okay. Well,
I'm gonna I just unmuted instead of raising my hand just because it's easier.
yes.
Olivia, I get it. That's walking and chewing gum when it's on a laptop. That's even harder. Anyway, Mary, I just wanted to say one of the reasons why you said everything, it all has a reason. Well, one of the reasons for it could be what you're dealing with, which is to distract you. So good for you. And I think everybody can relate. For me, well, as far as like this platform, which Shang, I mean, just looking at what has happened until now is a testimony to the value of mind mapping. It is unbelievable how well thought out this is. You know, a lot of times people let, you know, throw it on the wall and see if it sticks and then you add to it. But, you know, you can tell you've had the pasta on the wall for a while and you've been working with it and then come out. So it really, I mean, it's just such a, it's such a perfect advantage. And of course you have experience launching things like this, but anyway, but I'm also I'm looking forward to the interaction. And I also, as Shang and Olivia know very well, I'm a huge proponent of interaction, and 1 + 1 = 1,000. So when you get a lot of voices looking in from all different perspectives, it just adds value, and plus it makes it a hell of a lot more fun. So I'm looking forward to these kinds of sessions and it's really great to see everyone's face. It's been really cool to read the introductions and all of that, but it's so cool to see you, and Sajith also, it was great to see your face and continue. And I love that there are so many live faces on here, but yeah, I mean, all the different ways of interaction that you have on it, whether it's office hours, I'm really looking forward to the challenges and that kind of thing, not only for the accountability's sake, Olivia, but also, and to be able to just sort of take this one little part, like Mary, what you were saying, to take this one little thing and just sort of mind map that instead of like, oh my God, I got to do it all. So I'm looking forward to those little pockets of it. But also, I mean, that's like the me part, but the us part is I look forward to hopefully, you know, getting perspectives on that and offering perspectives to what you all are doing, because that's where I think the value of community comes in. So that's as far as my Map Nation goes. For me, I am looking to bring the kinds of interactions that I've been creating through Stone Soup Ripple to private clients. And so I'm hoping that through this, I will find, you know, opportunities and ways of, you know, paths to get there, and perhaps even introductions. And Shang has been instrumental in creating a little under 4-minute short that is a taste of one of these of an online screening salon. And I did that because they're different. They're not your typical. And so sometimes it's like you sort of have to dive in to see what it's about. And this way you can get a little taste of it. And so that has been an important piece, which literally just got finalized, you know, days ago. But that's been an important piece for me to be able to outreach in a way that makes sense to the people I'm outreaching to, because everybody's time is precious, and I want to make sure that I have the right approach, since it is a little outside the box. So I'm just thrilled to be part of this and honored to be part of this. and
Thank you,
witnessing.
Christine. I actually love what you said about, sharing our perspectives, right? Because that's really truly what community is. And we have some amazing people on this platform already. Like, I was going through the intros, I was like going like, wow, 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 right? And I already see some of the interactions where, for example, Gordon Harvey is like a faculty member of like 15 years. And then he's already giving some advice to a junior, chair of a new department. So these are the kind of interactions that I would love to see us just, helping each other from our different perspectives and experiences. Noah, yes, I have a number of projects in and outside of work. I co-lead a philosophy meetup group. That is freaking awesome, man. But the major theme right now is adjusting to life in a nonverbal way, meaning I have to be more organized than before as I have everything written out and just can chime in on meetings. Very true. So I'm using mind mapping to plan and adjust to that and hope this community will help me get better organized and be overall more efficient. Yeah, this is actually something that like many of us don't really have that, almost like that experience, right? Like what if you just lost your speech like tomorrow and you're not used to it? And that's a constraint where you're having to work around it. But at the same time, I almost feel like sometimes our constraints force us to be more creative too. So this is just like, it's neuroplasticity at the end of the day. We adapt in other ways. So that's super cool, man. Like, I love that perspective, that mindset, actually. That's probably the most important thing. All right, Bruno.
All right. First of all, nice meeting everyone. And Noah, let me know what is this meetup group for philosophy. I would love to join.
I want to know too.
That's really cool. So for me, like I haven't been mind mapping for too long. It's probably like I started this year. I have always been interested in like productivity stuff, like getting things done type of things. I have like to-do lists like everywhere. Like I have so many like written notebooks and like things, digital like lists, and it gets confusing at some point. I have like all this like different kinds of projects that I've always like thought about, and I guess in the beginning of this year I was trying to clarify things in my life like a little bit better, and that's where I started to look at like productivity stuff, and I stumbled upon Mind Map Nation and Chang's videos, and I was like, oh, I've been thinking about mind mapping for a while, I just never done it, maybe let's give this a try. And I started to just mind map stuff. Now I have mind maps everywhere.
Instead of sticky notes.
Exactly. But the thing I find fascinating is like when you do the mind maps yourself and you just forget about them, and maybe like a few weeks later you come back to them and it's like you start looking at it, it's like it doesn't make sense, and then you start to read it and it's like, oh yeah, that's exactly where my brain would go. And it's like it's really interesting to see how it's more visual, and it helps. It has helped me like organize quite a few things. I still have like trouble with like the process of like going back to it, and maybe that's a matter of like setting up a process or something like that. But I've seen like the benefits of like having something that seems maybe like overwhelming and unapproachable, and just like start mind mapping and like things get clearer, and you get like calmer and you can start like doing things. And the other thing I'm interested in is just learning in general.
Yeah.
So I would love to see, I'm excited to see mind maps from other people, to see if they just like mind map differently and they think differently. So maybe there's something like I can learn from. So that's one of the things I'm interested in as well. Yeah.
No, thank you so much for sharing, Bruno. And for context, Bruno works essentially for Facebook, right? And I used to work in big tech as well. And there's just like so many projects that you're involved with at any given time. And especially if you have like interests outside of work. And Bruno, I read your intro. You have like a ton of interests.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of different information, sources coming at you all the time. And these days, I almost feel like, modernity has given us a sense of ADHD just because of just how many sources of distractions that's going on too. So I feel lost often. That's why my map so often. All right. Well, we got Bob.
All right, thank you. I'm gonna let you guys in on another little thing that I usually don't mention right away, but but it kind of connects with what we're talking about and what I'm going to be using some of this for. Additionally, I'm also an ordained minister, and I have my specialty is in the area of grief and bereavement. So
Wow.
I've done over 2,000 plus funerals in my lifetime and deal a lot with a lot of tragedy. The reason why I made some of the move into also doing the communication is you can't do grief and bereavement all day long. But I have used the mind mapping in our grief seminars for
Wow.
people trying to make the connections of where they're sort of like their loss history, what the history of the losses are. And I found out instead of graphing it, that they can think much quicker and you can see them start making the connection. So I've done that in there along with looking at not only their histories, but some of their past relationships and the maps that kind of go with that. And so I'm looking to kind of also integrate a little bit more of that because I want to do that, kind of take that to a corporate level a little bit more with corporations, because a lot of the corporations do not seem to be able to address these emotional intelligence issues that are going on. So I think it's going to be interesting, especially this community. I'd love to get input from people on what they would be looking for in that corporate environment, because I think emotional intelligence is the thing that everybody's talking about, but nobody, and people try to define it, but nobody really knows how to operate. All you got to do is go on YouTube when you're not looking for Shang stuff. You can look at people fighting at Walmart and everything else, the stuff that goes on in corporations. So it'd be interesting. So I kind of want to integrate the communication, because grief is almost always about incomplete communication of an emotional kind that people have. And so that's where it sort of all blends together. And so I'm kind of trying to blend it a little bit more and see where the connections are at. I've got mind maps everywhere about it. It hasn't all come together
That's amazing.
yet. Anyway, so that's what I'm hoping to get out of this and get people's input on the outside, because sometimes I'm too close to it. So
Bob, that's freaking amazing. I'm so glad that you shared that, right? Because man, there's so much unpacked there. This is what you just talked about requires like a separate meeting that we can talk about for like a full hour, because there's nothing more complicated than actually our inner workings, right? Like we're trained from a very young age, from school and everything, to actually untangle the external chaos, right? To deal with that, because that's what we get paid for at the end of the day in our system. However, because for 8 hours a day, we're at work and literally we're told to check our emotions at the door and be professional. It's a muscle, it's an underdeveloped muscle, which is this emotional intelligence, this way to actually, untangle and express ourselves. So I think what you're working on is phenomenally important. And it's not just grief, it's probably going to save people's lives while they're living. That's how important it is. I would love to dedicate just like, another, even just like a meetup within our community to, talk through what you're working on. I'm pretty sure there's a lot of people who are interested in that. I definitely am.
Yeah, I'd love to. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, no, for sure. Thank you so much. All right. Before we move on, actually, I'm just curious, Sajeev, let us know if you have anything, to share as well.
Yeah, actually, I'm currently moved to a product facing role, so product role. Basically, I was planning to use mind map because I have to do a lot of presentations and stuff, and I'm also working in ad tech, so it's kind of systems are more complex. So I'm trying to use mind map to explain these things easily to our internal teams. That's one part. Another part is I just started a business with my friend back in India. So we started a business, but it's all over the place. So we started as like a medical equipment rental, or basically like if people need wheelchairs, so we give it for rent. And then we started doing sales as well. And then we expanded into other products. So it's kind of everywhere now. So I'm just trying to use mind map to, to control, to focus, to cut down everything and just start focusing on one thing and move on from there. Thinking part, basically. Those are the two things I'm planning to use mind maps on.
Got it. No, that's awesome. That's actually the world that I just came from, which is, the startup world. And that's actually a perfect segue into, this thing, right? Because you just said there's just so much stuff going on in your company. There's a lot of moving parts in modern startups and stuff. You're trying to figure out sales, you're trying to figure out product and everything. Speaking of product, this is actually, you guys might have seen this, which is the mind map that I use to distill a lot of the responses from two particular questions in the questionnaire that I had posed to you guys in the application, which is, what would you like to get out of this community, which we actually just went through, and what do you use mind maps for, which we also touched on, right? And then what I did was I tried to map it to all the various different features of our community, including like support or support circles we'll go into later, but the different channels, different houses, the ebooks and the challenges, right? So this was a way for me to try to figure out, before, it's like, what Christine said, it's like, it's still, like, putting some spaghetti on the wall and seeing what sticks, but it's like having a more methodical way of going about it. And Sanjeev, this is kind of like what you're talking about, which is, this is just part of a much larger product map that I had mapped out over time, right? So I can even follow my train of thought, which is like, I started with My Map Nation's design philosophy, right? Because every product should be guided by a design philosophy. What is it for? Who is it for? How are you going to go about it? What are some of the inspirations in terms of like product features, because you don't need to reinvent the wheel. And this is something that I populated over the course of several months, which, to Bruno's point, once you create a map, you can always go back to it and start. It's additive. You can add to it over time, and it becomes more robust over time too. And it's actually a visualization of your understanding of a particular topic or reality, right? As you have more information come through. But of course, a mind map is also not necessarily static. I mean, it is static in the sense that it's almost like a snapshot in time of what your current understanding is. But then that's why I create other mind maps to represent my new understanding also. So depending on the purpose, of course. Anyways, this is all to kind of share what it eventually became, right? Because for me, mind mapping is almost like the philosopher's stone of sorts, where you're converting creative ideas, creative chaos into productive output. And that output could be a presentation, could be a product, it could be a meetup, or in our case, My Map Nation, the platform itself. So this is what's the end result. So I figured maybe right now I go quickly through some of the features and tabs for you guys as well. So the homepage is where all the feeds are. This is where you're going to get, all of the recent posts from everybody. You probably have noticed direct messages from folks. The town square is what I would consider almost like, when I created My Map Nation, I was like, hey, what is almost like the analogy that we want to have? What is the vibe, right? So I said, well, a nation is, I was thinking about it almost like a city state, right? It's like a little town, because that's like the most micro unit essentially of a group of people. So then the town square is where everybody meets and comes together for events, for introductions, to check out the library and suggest new improvements for the community. So that's exactly what it is. Community wins is interesting, mainly because I actually think that there are a lot of times people think that in order to get better at something, you just have to perform, you have to, practice a lot. Practice equals performance. But there's actually a lot more than that. There's actually mindset, there is self-image, there is visualization, all of which, requires the right practice, but most importantly is actually celebrating your wins, right? It's almost kind of like you want to feel like you're progressing in something. And often when we're in the grind of leveling up in whatever it is that we're doing, we tend to forget these milestones. So this is almost an opportunity to pause and think about what was a win, no matter if it's like, making a small mind map or having like a big presentation done or launching a new product, right? I would love for you guys to share even like the small wins, because it helps with understand or remembering the milestones, but also developing that gratitude over time. So this is where you can share your wins, and the community is able to just like root you on and give you that positive reinforcement as well. So I think that's actually super important. Events and announcements. So this is actually where I would recommend, this is where you'll find all of the events, of course, but this event calendar is pretty key. And I've added some directions here for actually adding the calendars to your own calendars. And this is probably the best way to not miss events, because once you click this, this will add it to your Google Calendar or Apple Calendar through the iCal file, right? So I have some documentation around here too. So definitely check that out. And I think, Christine, to your point, for pretty important events and stuff like that, I should probably send out an email reminder for folks as well. I think that's probably a good practice, right? The library. Okay, so right now the library only has two things, which is the two mind mapping books that I wrote. However, in the future, I would love for this to actually populate, for example, after this event, the recordings of the event here. And then for me, the library isn't just a place where you just consume information. It's where the conversation can happen after the event is over. So for example, once I post this recording on here, if you have any questions about what we talked about, you can actually comment directly in the post, and I'm able to continue the conversation. It's almost like a networking kind of like overflow room after the event is over, right? That's how I kind of see the library of sorts. And of course, suggestions box, because this is your community now. So if there are meetups, there are more chat rooms or more features or whatever it is you think that we can improve the community together, definitely post it here or send me a DM. Community handbook. This is just all the documentation stuff. If you're lost or whatever, check that out. And then we've got the houses. So this is arguably probably the most interesting thing about the community. And in going about this, I was thinking, everybody that is coming into this community is super diverse, as we already found out from just, the 6, 7 of us, right? So there's going to be particular topics that we gravitate towards. And I named this houses like Harry Potter style, is so that we can feel at home in a particular space and feel safe to express ourselves and also share our knowledge and expertise. But not only that, if we are brave enough or courageous enough and curious enough to venture out into other houses, right? So for example, if you're like super into project management and product development, but you're curious about emotional development or emotional cultivation using mind mapping or other tools, right? Then you can go from technical masterminds to sensitive poets. So that's how I foresee the dynamic happening. So these houses are completely open, so feel free to jump in and ask any questions or share any of your knowledge and experiences there. And then finally, we've got challenges. So as Olivia mentioned, accountability is hugely important, but it's also really it's also really difficult to actually progress without accountability in my perspective, as well as structure. So the challenges provide those two things, structure and accountability, right? So these are essentially, set programs that we partake as a community over the course of 1 or 2 weeks in able to improve on a particular topic. So our first one is actually going to be mind mapping, and it's going to be based off of the second ebook. So mind mapping mastery in 7 days. So for each day, we're going to create one new mind map of a different sort. And what you do is, let me see, there you go. So inside of each of these posts is pretty detailed instructions, step-by-step instructions of how to make a particular map. And then every day, what you can do is you can go in and actually what Noah has already done is, accepted a challenge and gone about it. Feel free to say, hey, I completed it this day. If you want to, totally optional, is share your mind map with the community as well, right? Because this way we can give you feedback, or we can just applaud and say, that looks really cool. And this community aspect and just rooting each other on is super important to actually just continuing and completing the program too. So for every new challenge that we take on as a community, I will kick us off with a meeting, right? Just to kind of set the tone and expectations and answer any questions you may have before we start. And then once we finish it, we will come together for a retrospective, just to get a sense of how you felt about the exercises, what you learn, what can we do to improve over time too? Because I think that's super important for just, betterment of everybody in the program as well. All right, I think that pretty much wraps up this this whole brief tour of the community. So at the end of the day, going back to what Christine said, when I created this community out of this giant mind map, it's like me building in a cave, right? It's a hypothesis of what works. Now that it's in broad daylight with everybody on board, it's a co-creation process that I'm taking in all your feedback and we're growing together. Even within the last week, the first 4 days, I've already seen this community start evolving over time with the different interactions, right? So definitely let me know how we can improve over time. And at this point, I would love to just give the stage over to you with any questions you may have.
Well, I have an impression and I don't know, but so I am not a mind mapper. I've heard about it forever. I guess in a way I'm a very nonlinear thinker, and which is why spreadsheets don't work for me. I mean, literally trying to figure out when I was married, I would literally be like, okay, what should go on the X and Y axis, because I just literally couldn't think this way and this way. So and I've heard about mind mapping and webs and things like that. I can't remember what they're called. And so I have started to try to do this. For me, it's really hard. In the same way, it's hard to figure out where the start point is. So I love this 7 days introduction kind of thing. When I have seen, when you've shared your mind maps and you've done mind maps for some of my salons that I've done, I'm like, I look at it and it's like the cat in the hat. This mess is so big and so deep and so tall, and it's so beautifully organized. But so I'm like, I could never do that. But one thing I did it was you showed a 1 hour process where you literally it was recorded of you creating a mind map. And I did it, and I shared this with you. I did it with you. I did my own mind map as you were doing yours, and it was amazing because it was digestible. I could do it, and it was really, really helpful. And so I love the fact of seeing simple ones first. When you just showed that, I was like, when you pulled out, I was like, oh my God. But anyway, so for me, this is very, I'm the kind of person that I want to put the time into this, and I want to really learn how to use this and integrate it into my life. And I think it was Bruno that said, but how do you revisit it? So for me, well, one is I don't have nice handwriting. And so, and I'm not, I'm like, I could see doing a mind map with Post-its or something, or something to try to, because it might change. And, and I know you use this white pad kind of thing that looks so cool, and you cut and move things as you did in that video. So for me, the process, the technique, the tools are important so that I don't, I don't know. So I guess one thing is, I'm sure you'll get here, but like, what are the tools that we need in order to do this in a way that is, like, I already think I know that I need a pencil with an eraser at least, or maybe it's Post-its, or I don't know, but that, and I guess I'm just sharing like a quandary that I know I will have is like, how do you figure out that start point? Because you had, in that one that I saw, you had a north and a south and east and a west, and then you put in something here, but it was like, oh, so that starting point is, I know, is really important because it builds from there. But it also, as you said, is sort of flexible because you can change it, you can rearrange it. So I don't know if this is a question or just sort of a sharing of impressions, but I'm so relieved that there is a way for pile people, I have this pile and that pile, to try to create it into something that makes sense. I rely a lot on my intuition and my, it's like the gods sort of say, oh, this is now what's supposed to be, front and center.
Yes.
So that has worked very well for me over the years. And I have to-do lists and all of that kind of thing, but I rely a lot on that sort of
Yes.
the percolation time, where
Yeah.
the white space time, where then something comes up and it's like, oh, okay. So to be able to systematize that kind of thinking and not only rely on that
Yeah.
will be really, really cool. So.
And Christine, thank you for posing that question. And, that's actually a really important question. Like, how do you start? What kind of tools should you use, right? As a beginner, especially if, handwriting is there's barriers to that as well, for sure. And this is exactly the strength of the community, because I know, for example, Bob and Bruno, they use software essentially for the prepping speeches, as well as like organizing their interests for sabbatical. So this is like this is a great question to actually pose in, for example, tactical masterminds, right? It's like, what kind of tools do you use to start, and how do you use it? And I think that's a great question, mainly because I'm actually kind of ill-equipped to answer that, because I use handwritten or hand-drawn maps so often. It's like the most natural thing to me, and I reserve like the software for the most complicated things, which means that when you see my digital mind maps, they're just by nature complicated. Right. So that's like, how do you go from 0 to 100? And I think there's folks in the community who are really, who are actually better at that than I am, I would say.
Well, and seeing the different ways that people do it will be great. I mean, I did it the other day with a pen, and it worked. And I showed it to you, and it was, incredibly messy. But this idea of like, how do you revisit it, and where do you put it, and how do they, so anyway, I just think this whole process of being able to walk through this with a group of people will be interesting. But just a quick question about the houses. So I could assume that the people in the tactical masterminds group would be the people that could share tools like that, whereas the people in the creative geniuses house, or it's sensitive poets house, which are probably the two that I would gravitate more to, would not. So the houses are flexible. I mean,
they're very flexible. I think the most important thing is to actually pose a question or share and create that conversation. That's actually the purpose of it. So the houses, it really is just a kind of a rough structure, and that even could evolve over time.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much, Christine. Bob?
I had to unmute myself. I think you started to kind of answer because I thought I was a bit nuts, to put it bluntly, because I basically do the same thing. And I was going to ask you, you had the mind map nation, you showed that entire intricate sort of thing that you did. The question is, did that start out then first in the notebook? Was it handwritten? And then how many, do you remember how many iterations of that you went through to get to where you finally said, okay, I'm going to put this on the software now?
Yeah, I would say it was probably 2 iterations of hand-drawn maps before I felt like that was bursting at seams, right? I migrate over to digital, where I feel like handwritten is hitting its limits from a complexity standpoint, especially if I feel like this is going to be a long-term project over the course of weeks, not if not months, and it's going to be continuously additive, right? That's when I migrate over to digital, for me at least.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and I think, like Christine said, I have horrible handwriting. So sometimes I think I had a brilliant insight that was like, aha, and I went, I can't read it. It's like, so it's like, it's like, it was my one little moment of brilliance and then it's gone. I look at it, I go, what? It's really bad. So that's why I've had to float between both of them. And And I run out of paper. Like I can't even use a little notebook. I have to get 11 by 17.
Oh man, yeah.
I have an 11 by 17 ream of paper that I'm using, but
Wow.
part of that may have to do with age and eyesight. But I was curious how many iterations you went through on your, as far as the handwritten before you started on the digital. So
that's right.
okay, cool.
Well,
cool.
And actually, Bob, I would, if Christine poses that question in the forum, please, share your wisdom and your experience with using digital, actually, because that's super important. Like, even for just the community in general, I feel like some people probably have a mobile solution for it also, because the idea is you never know when it's going to come around, and we have our smartphones with us at all times these days.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I'm constantly taking pictures or screenshots of things because, and that's how and then I put them in different folders. So that's sort of how I start to create some pieces. And like now with this, I'm taking notes on my notes thing, from this, but yeah, it's that, and I think that happens with, and I think everybody who will be part of this community, I think everybody really is a creative, but I think there's always that it's not necessarily an issue, but the challenge of how do you harness it, and how do you harness what your ideas are, how do you channel it, and how do you then keep making the linkages so that you can benefit from the past while moving into the future.
Yeah, that's really good questions that we'll definitely go into, actually. And Bruno.
Yeah, so if I may, I can share quickly like what has worked for me so far. So I started like looking at tools and doing all that kind of like research in the beginning, and I tried like a few different ways. So I got a notebook, and I got the erasable pens. Like I found it very useful, actually. So, and I found it especially useful for throwaway mind maps. So, a daily to-do, I think it's handwritten and paper is perfect for it, because I'm not really like going back to it.
Yes.
But the other thing that I found very useful as well, and it's probably like from seeing Chang using it as well, is Notion. So Notion I found very useful to organize, I don't know, different areas of life. And one of the things I did was like list down like all projects I had in my mind. It's just a list, it's not a mind map. But once I focused, like I'm gonna work on this project, then I would go and create a mind map for it. And that's how I found useful. And there's lots of software. Like you can spend weeks just looking at what software to use, and it's kind of a waste. I try the one with the iPad. It's pretty useful. But the one that I found most useful was two. There's Xmind, but that's paid. And the one that I use most often is Gitmind. It's a website. You can just use it on the website. It's pretty close to Xmind, and it's free. Like you can just go and use it. So that's what worked for me pretty well. And now to a question.
Yes.
It's so what I would the thing I've been like struggling with a little bit with mind maps is the versioning of it. Let's say I guess it's like as it evolves, like how do you prevent it from becoming like brittle? Like you just go and like, let me delete this node that has like a lot of things like connected. You probably like won't like delete it just because you worked on it and afraid to like lose the thoughts. How does it evolve for you? Like it's different from, if you're looking at code, you would be like doing commits and you have like the versioning and it can always like go back in time. But with mind maps, I haven't like found the way to do it like so far.
Yeah. Well, so my perspective on that is once you feel like you need to have that or, delete entire branches, it's time to actually think about what is should you be using a different tool to store this knowledge, right? Mind mapping for me is actually a bridge to something else. And this is where, to your point, Notion is so important with Kanban boards and, and actually creating action out of the mind maps. the mind maps itself, often there's the process as well as the knowledge. Sometimes the process is actually really important. That's where the throwaway mind maps, hand drawn and stuff are actually, that's probably, the process is more important than the mind maps themselves. And then they're for big projects where you're trying to track things and stuff. When the mind map actually gets so big, I'm going like, what other tools should I actually be using for knowledge storage? Because mind maps themselves is actually a poor way, in my experience at least, is actually not great at like storage of long-term information. It's almost like RAM of sorts. It's like short-term memory that you can convert into some kind of action, but then you can revisit to understand a point in time perspective of what you're working on. That's a philosophy at least. And we're a little bit short on time, but this is actually something that we can probably have a further discussion on in the forums actually as well, right, in the houses. So Bruno, if you would like, you can pose that question in one of the houses, and then we'll get to it that way also.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah. All right, guys.
What's Notion? Sorry, I didn't
Yes.
understand when, is that part of something parallel to GetMind and the other one?
It's something completely different. Notion, how to describe it. It's both a note-taking, it's like a knowledge depository, it's knowledge, understanding. It's also like a productivity tool, all in one. I will share actually some links after this call
Okay.
in the post to
Okay.
answer that question too.
Cool.
Yeah. All right, everyone. Thank you so much. This has been an amazing kickoff. I could not have asked for a better group of folks actually to join me on this journey with. So, thank you for coming in at 9 a.m. or wherever you are. Even Bob, welcome to this side of the coast. Happy camping. All right, guys, today's Monday. We got a bunch of other stuff, for the remaining of this week. Join whenever you're available. Everything's going to be recorded except for the power hours, just because it's kind of a little bit odd or boring to watch a bunch of people just like heads down for an hour. Who knows? Maybe Olivia will watch that for accountability. All right, guys, go forth. Let's take on this week, and I'll see you soon.
Bye-bye.
Take
Thanks,
care,
everyone.
guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank
Shay.
you.
Thank you, everyone.